Hello everyone and welcome back to another video. This is the 11th episode of the story in which Naruto has gained knowledge of his heritage and of a bloodline thought extinct. He must now leave Konoha to master his new abilities and bring back the glory of the Uzumaki, and he will have the help of a 5th Kage of Kirigakure with a similar past. After watching, like, share and subscribe to the channel. Yuzu Island, Nagato's hideaway. I can't believe it. Nagato expressed his disbelief as the blonde Kage in front of him waited for his response. In all honesty, he had never considered that alternative. You say that through love that can bring understanding? Booty killed our sensei, why don't you hate me? Naruto took a few steps forward and looked Nagato right in the eyes. A fiery determination emanated from the blue orbs. I may never forgive you for what you have done to Jiraiya, but I can give you a clean slate because I understand what brought you to doing what you did. I understand what you did and I accept it. I am willing to give up on some pointless quest of revenge if it means that I can spread peace, for that is my wish for the future of this world, not only for me but for my children and the people of this world as a whole. Nagato again was at a loss for words as the boy reinforced his fact of peace by telling him that he understood his murder and yet he accepted it because it was done for the good of all. He had listened where others had turned deaf ears. This boy, maybe I can believe in him even if I can no longer believe in myself. Now. Konan shifted her view to Nagato, shock etched into her visage as she saw one thing she thought she would never see again. Nagato was smiling. Thank you Naruto Uzumaki for giving me something to believe in again. Naruto smiled and put out his hand, one of which the frail man could unfortunately not shake with his own. Instead the Deva path, the one made from his dear friend Yahiko, walked forward and took Naruto's sign of peace with a smile of its own. Naruto Uzumaki. Naruto was surprised when Pain began to talk and saw that Nagato was speaking in tandem with it through their link. What would you have Pain do to further this option of peace? Naruto frowned and took back his hand, instead now using it to scratch his head. In truth, while they had the idea, Naruto did not yet know how to spread it. With the world in a state of suspicion and fear and with war looming over the horizon, it would be difficult to spread the word of peace. Naruto then realized that no matter how much understanding he could give to one person, Madara and Sasuke were lost causes. While he hated to admit it, even he could not deny that the corruption of the Uchiha was absolute save for Itachi, the one man that was able to escape the self-destruction destiny by dedicating his life to his brother. The sad irony was that he was killed by that same brother who sought only power. I hate to sound contradictory Nagato, but I'm afraid we might not be able to spare Madara or Sasuke. Both have allowed themselves to go too far and have allowed evil to swallow their hearts and minds. I fear that only an intervention by death itself could bring them down from their pedestals. The man with the ringed eyes pondered this, nodding to himself as he had also observed both of their actions as going too far. We must bring an end to them, but even with my Rinnegan, I am no match for Madara Uchiha. He has admitted to me himself that he has lost much power from his glory days, however, his skill is not one to be underestimated. Sasuke Uchiha, though I have seen him from afar and I believe that it is time that we put an end to him. I can do this myself. His power has not yet surpassed my own and my time will give me the chance to give one last act of God from this God. Naruto bit his lip in thought. While he had wished to be the one to kill Sasuke as he felt it was only right, he could not deny Nagato's wish to do one last act of good for the world. To this end, he nodded in assent to the man's hidden request. As you believe in me Nagato, I shall believe in you. With your last act as God, you can redeem one man with death and save the rest of the world from his future sins. Thank you for accepting the task. I will admit to wishing to be the one to do it myself, but as I'm sure as you can tell I have much to do myself. Nagato smiled and nodded. The boy had great potential and it was he who had the only hope to stop Madara. He turned to Konan, who felt confused over what to do with herself. Konani, believe this is where we part ways. Sasuke will come here, that much I am sure of, so my time will be near. I have one last wish I want you to fulfill for me. Konan's eye widened in shock to hear words she never thought would be spoken. This would be the final place where all three AIM orphans would be? No, I will fight with you. It was Yahiko's dash. His dead stare pierced her amber eyes. silencing her desperate plea. The crimson-haired man slowly shook his head. No, Conan, Yahiko would want you to live on and help bring peace to the world. I will lend my final hand to helping Naruto's peace, and both Yahiko and I expect you to do the same. He coughed again. Blood appeared on his lower lip as it trickled from within his body. Please, Conan, grant my final wish as the angel of God you are. Naruto was shocked to watch as the strong woman's eyes began to tear up. The fact of separation was eating away at her, and the thought of her losing another friend must have been too much. Yes, I will. Nagato had, is it? The man coughed again before looking at the mouth of the cave. A storm was beginning to brew on the tropical island. Head for Amigakure and rouse the people. Tell them their god finally has found something to fight for. You must help Naruto bring peace to the world. We are counting on you. He accentuated his point by having the Deva Path smile, a smile that made Conan briefly replace the corpse's face with Yahiko's, a sudden flash of resemblance brought on by the similar words that would have been spoken by their friend. Naruto watched as Conan's tears spilled and the edges of her mouth curved in a smile, not a sad one, but a truly understanding and happy one despite her tears. She nodded and walked forward, laying a hand on Nagato's shoulder. Unspoken words were said between them with their eyes before Conan took her hand back and walked towards Deva. While he was a mere puppet to Nagato's control, Conan let herself be fooled again with that flash of resemblance with Yahiko by hugging the body that was once her friend's for what could be the last time. It brought its arms around her and hugged back, a final goodbye between two old friends. Goodbye, Nagato, Yahiko. Both men in question nodded as she turned to leave, only to take a longing glance towards Naruto, who had remained rooted to his spot during their goodbyes. Naruto, Uzumaki, this angel will fight beside you from now on. I will go rally the people of AIM and come back here, for when the final battle of this war is brought. Goodbye. With her final words said, Conan ran out of the cave and disappeared into the roaring maelstrom of wind and rain that was taking place in the early evening hours. Naruto shared a glance to Nagato to see what he would do now, a question forming in his mind. Nagato sensed it coming and looked to the boy with a bored yet inquisitive face, encouraging him to continue. What is it, boy? Naruto crossed his arms over his chest and frowned, concerned with something he heard Nagato say earlier. You said Sasuke would come here. What did you mean by that? Nagato's eyes narrowed then widened as he sought to and accomplished his remembering of the phrase. A frown set on his features as he realized the boy's legitimate concerns on the matter. Yes, Sasuke Uchiha will come here, to Yuzu. I expected that you knew this would happen, Naruto. It should come as no surprise since your last encounter with him. The boy wants to make you suffer, and following Madara's train of thought, what better way to get you out of the way than by sending such a fighter as Sasuke to slow you down? It may be fate that you would fight him, but as a god, I will change that fate so that I may relinquish his curse on this world. I will protect you, your family, and your people of this island with all 7 of my bodies, including this one. Naruto was surprised by the seriousness in his tone and allowed a reassuring smile to creep onto his features. He believed in Nagato. That sounds like a plan. I have a few things to do in the village, but then after that, I will have to leave for quite some time. I hate to do it in such a hectic time, but there is some training I must attend to if I wish to defeat Madara and his plans. Will you be alright if I leave you here? Naruto explained, and Nagato nodded in assent. Yes, it will be best if I remain here. To actively control these bodies I must be at a high altitude for my chakra signals to reach them. If I get any closer to your village, I will have trouble controlling all of the paths and my effectiveness will lower. I will move all 6 to an area near your village where I am sure he will start first to find you. Naruto nodded and looked at the man's 6 paths, as he called them. All were staring at him with the same eyes, and it frightened him a bit. Seeing the familiar and unsettling view of the Akatsuki robes, Naruto realized his next question. Would it be alright if I could ask that you remove the Akatsuki robes from the panes? I know that you have probably worn them for a long time, but from the reception you received in the city I'm sure you can notice how people can react to the sight of them. Nagato seemed to ponder this and shrugged. Naruto watched as the panes removed their robes, leaving them only in their pants and sandals. Naruto uncharacteristically blushed at the sight of the single female body. Her perky breast somehow caught his attention and he looked away. It was unfortunate that he was still affected by such a simple thing, but it was in his originally timid nature that it stemmed from. "Is something the matter, Naruto-sama?" Naruto heard the toneless female pain speak and looked at her, specifically her face, and shook his head. "I was just thinking that if you wanted to I could supply you with vests to put on over your torsos. Just for like from protection against the elements?" Naruto stuttered out, making the last part form as a question when he realized they were just dead bodies with no feelings. "But we have no feeling, we require no clothing. We only wear robes and our other clothing for modesty, but if you wish to supply us with flak vests we can use them as a deterrent during our future battle." The Deva Path noted, and Naruto silently thanked Nagato for agreeing with him before he took out a scroll from the pocket of his own flak vest and used it to reveal 5 crimson vests of Yuzu. "You are right to only give us 5, the Azura Path would not be able to wear one due to his weaponry." The Deva Path noted as the 5 other pains accepted the vests before quickly putting them on and zipping them up. Naruto felt weird to admit it, but it did seem interesting to have them in Yuzu uniform. It was almost as if they were his shinobi. Thankful that that last annoyance was out of the way, Naruto made his way to the mouth of the cave while the 6 pains followed closely behind. He spared a final glance towards Nagato and waved goodbye and smiled to the man's simple nod in return. "Goodbye Naruto Uzumaki, be sure to spread your word of peace and save the world from the path of hatred." Naruto leaped out of the cave and the paths fell into step behind him as he made his way back to the hidden village. 000 Yamusha watched as Naruto left the cave with the pains, all standing and intact, without any fuss at all. He smiled with the other primates as they knew their trust in Naruto was well placed and he had won the battle with Akatsuki, whether it was through fists or words. Without words, the monkeys followed Naruto back through the forest to his home so that they could collect him for the training. It could be delayed no longer. Naruto's lava training would have to begin now. 000 Uzugakure Uzumaki compound. Uzukage's inner estate. Mei sat on the porch bench, Rashi in her arms, watching the rain endlessly pour in front of them. Mei looked up into the sky and noted the darkening of it, leading the grimace already planted on her face to grow deeper. She was growing progressively more worried as no sign of Naruto was in sight. She was sure their home would be the first place he would head. What if he was really defeated? What if the monkeys lied about him being safe? I have never felt so helpless until now. Was this what it felt like for Mother? She had the power to defend herself against those people, but she didn't feeling helpless against them as she was beaten down. If Akatsuki's goal was to weaken my resolve with this meeting, they have done a great job. As the rain seemed to intensify to an all-time high, Mei caught movement in the corner of her eye. The gate slowly opened and there he stood, wet and soaked but safe. Naruto had returned just like she had hoped. She wanted to run to him, hug him, kiss him, hold him, but with Rashi and the rain she was unable to do anything but stand and wait at the first step of the porch with a relieved smile gracing her features. Naruto smiled at the sight of her, Mei Uzumaki, holding his child and waiting for him to come home. Even with their disagreement, she still loved him as much as he loved her, and nothing would ever change that. Pain had left Naruto a short while ago to hide and disperse around the Uzumaki compound to keep his eyes open for Sasuke, leaving him with privacy. With only his Kage hat to protect him from the pelting storm, Naruto made his way up the steps to stand face to face with his wonderful wife and brought a smile to his own face. The two expressed no words for a moment, a serene peace that gave them both a chance to recover from the recent ordeal. "I'm back, Mei," Naruto said, wrapping an arm around her waist as she brought her free hand up to caress his cheek. Naruto brought her in for a kiss, to which she happily received. It wasn't a quick peck though. Both lovers had had enough with their decision to keep a distance from each other and relished in the other's presence. The happy squeal of their baby brought them out of lip lock and into eye contact with Rashi's big blue eyes. His smile was infectious as the parents were soon smiling back down at him. "Looks like Rashi is happy to see you too, Naruto," Mei noted as she led Naruto back into the house and away from the rain. Be sure to take your hat and robes off, you are soaking wet, she warned him as they entered the small alcove where sandals and other accessories were deposited before entering the main home. Naruto sighed happily to hear her warm tone again, even if it was used as a scolding. He had missed it for the past few days. With all that was happening in such a short amount of time, it felt warm inside of him to know that his wife would remain a constant in his life, no matter what shortcomings would arise. As he lay his hat on the top of the coat hanger, he smiled as he knew that his duty in bringing peace would not falter as long as he had her in his heart. "May, would you put Rashi to bed? I want to have a few words with you." May had walked into the family room, just a short distance away from the nook where Naruto was at the front door, and heard his order perfectly. A chill ran down her spine at the sound of it though. He surely found out by now is going to scold me and doesn't want Rashi in the middle of it. I suppose I had this coming. Yes, dear. She called out, running up the stairs to Rashi's new room and placed him in his crib. At first he frowned at losing the familiar warmth of his mother's bosom, but he quieted as she lulled him to sleep with a lullaby. Natsuhiboshi Nezakai. Yubkanashia yum wamita. Nate Hanashita. Akai miyo. Natsuhiboshi, Naze mayo. Kita warashi wasaga shitaru. Dakara kanashia yum wamiru. Natsuhiboshi, Nezakai. Yubkanashia yum wamita. Nate Hanashita. Akai miyo. Natsuhiboshi, Naze mayo. Kita warashi wasaga shitaru. Dakara kanashia yum wamiru. May smiled softly as the little babe closed his eyes and kept them closed, allowing her to cover him with a blanket and leave the room. She straightened her robes and headed down to the family room where she felt Naruto would be. While she was nervous, even more so after Naruto's serious tone with her, May would not be frightened or intimidated. Naruto turned towards the opening where May entered the room, a small smile gracing his lips as she walked towards him. He was standing near a window, leaning on the windowsill as he watched the peaceful rain patter against it, making a soft sound that could lull him to sleep. The blonde had been thinking of what to say, but he found it difficult to think with all that had happened up until that point. "May, why didn't you tell me?" He began his talk softly, a surprising turn for May, who had believed he would be angry or hateful towards her. She found it much more difficult to stand her ground now. "I didn't want you to risk your life needlessly anymore. I was the Mizukage Naruto. I know better than most what it means to command an army of shinobi and have the responsibility of protecting a nation weighted on your shoulders. I thought that you were powerful enough that you didn't need something that could," she sniffed. Naruto thought he could hear her voice catch. "Could kill you." Naruto sent an arm in her direction, just out of reach of her waist. That was his target. He wanted to comfort her, tell her that he would be fine, although even in his own feelings, he had doubts on the training. She took his hand and gripped it tightly with both her own, sending it to her chest where her heart was. Tears began to spill from her eyes as she could no longer take the feelings of trepidation, worry, and even doubt that had built up in her heart. This was where she would reveal it all to him and hope he would understand. "I didn't want to lose anyone close to me anymore, Naruto. I lost my mother, my father, my clan, everything with you. I finally was able to gain the love I had sought for so long," and she took a moment to stifle a sob. Naruto's eyes quivered as he listened and felt himself go weak at seeing her so broken up inside. "With Rashi I now have a family of my own. If you go on this training I'll lose you too." That was enough for Naruto, and he moved to envelope May in a tight embrace, not wanting to let go of her, ever. "You won't lose me, May, I promise." She looked up from where her head had been buried in his chest and opened her mouth to retort, only to have it covered with his own. Naruto felt her sadness as he tasted her salty lips stained from tears, trying his best to take away her pain. "I know I can't promise that everything will be alright like I usually do, because even I can tell this will be dangerous. Really, I am probably the most insane person to even think of putting my life on the line for this, but I'm not doing it so I can gain more power." May quieted herself as his voice lowered to a whisper. "I'm doing it to protect you." "But Naruto Naruto pecked her lips and laid a kiss on her forehead, silently basking in just holding her in his arms. I'm going to have to fight Madara eventually. Might is going to happen. I can't stop that outcome and neither can you. The only thing we can do is prepare ourselves for that inevitable so that when the time comes, we can tell ourselves that we did our best and did everything in our power to win, even if we are destined to fail anyway. It is better to do something than to do nothing, and it is even worse to know of the problem and still do nothing. Do you understand why I have to do this? Mei didn't want to understand, she wanted to say no, but she nodded anyway because the sad truth was she knew that it was he who would have to fight Madara and put an end to it all. She just wished he didn't have to shoulder such a dangerous burden. Yes, I do, but this time she was silenced by his own words. The whisper had turned into a confident speech as he asked her one last question. Do you trust me? He backed up a bit so that they could look into each other's eyes and she could see that fiery passion that could make anyone believe in him, the look that made any man follow such a leader. Betraying herself, Mei allowed a smile to surface as she brought a hand to wipe away the tears. Naruto waited for her response but felt a smile tug at his own lips as she brought both her hands to his cheeks and allowed herself to get close. Yes, I do, Naruto Uzumaki. I know that you will bring us peace and I know that you will come back to me. Naruto smiled and kissed her, allowing his passion for her to get caught up in her own emotions as she slammed her lips against his own. Mei moaned as Naruto began to win the tongue war and felt his two hands land on her lower thighs and roughly lift her into the air. Her legs quickly swung around and hooked behind his back as her arms linked around his neck. The Uzumaki could not take the sexual tension any longer, it was time to rekindle the flames that burned in their hearts for one another. In an instant, both Uzumaki were in their bedroom and Naruto brought himself down on Mei as he laid her on the bed. With a flick of his wrist, she was undressed with her white and red robe becoming a useless piece of fabric and an obstacle to him. Naruto took a moment to look at her stunning form, the way her russet red hair scrambled everywhere on the bed with its insane length and made it look like she had an aura around her, the smooth pale white skin that he had come to love, the perky breasts that he would not trade for a single thing. Her beautiful lips, blue lips and nails that brought out the best in her, her single revealed emerald eye seemed to sparkle under his gaze, as if he was looking at a diamond. With a few tense moments, Naruto was left in nothing but boxers with his own skillful hand. Mei had nothing but a small pair of panties on. She would admit though that she had not expected Naruto to be so aggressive after they made up. She liked it though. He sat himself on the bed in front of her almost naked form, running his fingers lightly on her skin and relishing in its soft texture. Mei shivered from his ministrations, enjoying the sweet torture that he was giving her before they began. Mei, you are so beautiful, he said, easily for the 100th time, but with no less fervor than the first. Mei blushed even then and guided his hands to her breasts, the nipples stood erect already from her excitement. I am yours, Naruto, please touch me more. Without any need for further invitation, Naruto grasped both breasts and squeezed them, just to tease. Mei moaned, surprising even herself with how sensitive they were. Combined with the breast milk from Rashi and how long she had gone without Naruto's touch, it was pure torture on her nerves. It was like a sweet massage for her and she relished in it, freely moaning with abandon. Ah, it feels so good, Naruto. Knowing what his wife needed, Naruto wedged himself between her legs and brought his face to one of her breasts, gently beginning to nip and suck at the nipple. Mei's eyes had been closed in pleasure until they shot open in surprise when she felt him bite on the sensitive spot, not enough to hurt but enough to get an obvious squeak. His eyes were closed in pure pleasure as he enjoyed every moment of playing with his wife's wonderful breasts. He now remembered just why he had been so jealous of Rashi for the past few days. How could anyone not be with Mei's wonderful form? But he knew that no matter what kind of argument they got into, Mei would always be his. There was nothing anyone could do about that. As the warm milk came in trickles from her breasts, Naruto gladly lapped up the liquid. It didn't matter what it tasted like or where it was from, it all felt so wonderful in his bout of ecstasy. Mei for her part was relishing in the release of so much of her milk. All the breast aches were disappearing as they were replaced with pleasure from Naruto's skilled tongue. Her moans were met with no resistance as she screamed her lungs out to her heart's content. We haven't even begun yet and it's like this is our first time. When he felt like he had had enough, Naruto disengaged himself from her chest and looked down towards her black panties with a hungry stare. It was obvious to him as his boxers had been rubbing against her lips that she was wet, wetter than even the rain outside. May could barely articulate words as he sucked on her breasts. When he ripped her undergarment off and locked his lips onto her clit, there was no sound that could accurately describe her pleasure. All she could do was continue to moan and try and sound out her husband's name as encouragement to continue until her sweet release was brought on in full. Naruto sucked and licked the delicate nub that would bring his wife pleasure, relishing in her moans and how her every move was governed by which action his tongue would take. Her arms were to her sides, clutching at the bed sheets or occasionally holding her mouth to try and stop her moans from waking all of the compound. "You like that, May?" Naruto paused in his actions for a moment to tease his wife. The dazed look on her face was priceless as her mind tried to figure out why he stopped. "Why did you stop?" Her raspy voice, hoarse from moaning, escaped her blue lips only for Naruto to bring that wonderful sound back when his tongue darted into her folds and inside of her, massaging her inner walls with its coarse feel. May felt her end approach. It was so obvious yet it hit her like a sucker punch from Tsunade. Naruto felt her legs and upper body quiver and knew what was about to happen. He took his hands that had been holding her breasts to holding her legs and brought his tongue out of her inner walls. Just as May thought Naruto would tease her to death, her end was again brought to the surface with one last hearty moan as Naruto attached his mouth to her clit again. He accepted her juices as they flowed from her lips and drank it all down, relishing in its taste. May could do nothing else but lay still on the bed, occasionally twitching as the orgasm wound down to its final spurts. It had been wonderful, quite possibly the best one she had ever had in her life. It was only fair that she did her best to return the favor. Naruto, he could just barely make out her voice from how rough it sounded, almost exactly how it had been after Rashi was born. At first he was afraid he had done too much when her legs masterfully twisted around his waist and brought his weight forward, leading his face to crash onto her breasts. They shared a moment of quiet before Naruto was again flipped onto his back while May now straddled him. Not trusting herself with just how stable she would be on her own, she quickly brought her naked body close to his and crawled down his torso to where her nimble hands quickly took away his last clothing item. Naruto felt her warm lips wrap around the head of his already erect dick and knew that it wouldn't be long. May had always amazed him at how good she was with oral sex, nor did he ever question her ability to make him feel good. That was why, as he felt the warm suction go up and down his pole, Naruto was content to hold the back of her head and ride his way to orgasm. May relished in the ability to make her husband feel so good with just an extension of foreplay. May had always welcomed Naruto's ability to make her come, and so she felt it was time to reward him, for what could be their last time in such togetherness. Naruto felt two warm and soft mounds squeeze him in between themselves and his eyes shot open to see May massaging his dick with her breasts. His eyes rolled back into his skull as he lightly pressed on the back of her head to make her speed up, to which she complied. He had never received a boob job from May. It came as a great shock but a pleasurable feeling. It was as if Kami knew the grave stakes Naruto and his family were about to face and gave him one last gift of pleasure, a sign maybe of good luck. That was in the back of Naruto's mind though, as through a combination of his wife's gentle sucking on his head to the massage of the rest of his pole, Naruto's end was already arriving. May had been happily drinking his pre-cum when it finally occurred to her that with her new technique underway, she was making Naruto come in half the time. She knew as his head lightly shook while in her mouth that his end was near and sped up, hoping to bring him to the same level of ecstasy as he did for her. It came as relief for both when Naruto's seed shot into her mouth and she gladly drank it all, not missing a single drop. With his own orgasm ending, Naruto brought back his control and flipped May onto her back. With one quick motion, Naruto was poised to enter May's folds with just her whim as his command. He looked into her eyes as did she into his, a silent message to begin. Naruto uttered 3 words as he slid into her, 3 words that could make or break a person, 3 words that May had begun to treasure since her time with him began. I love you. His rhythm was a fast one, even though it had the same amount of passion as a slow beginning would have. With ease, Mei found her niche and began to slam back onto him with her own body. She would tighten around him and he would push harder to keep up his rhythm. She slowed down and he would speed up to pick up the tempo. It was quick for her mind to realize that there was no way she could keep up and just allowed her moans to keep him going as she grabbed onto the bed sheets again. With their movement and his position, Naruto had a perfect view of Mei's wonderful mounds bouncing back and forth. It was as if they were teasing him, that his job had not been good enough the first time and they were enticing him to come back. Not one to be outdone and definitely not one to skimp on pleasuring his wife, Naruto leaned down and began to suck on her breasts. If Mei had been holding it together before then, she was now melted putty in his hands. With her end apparent, Naruto sped up his movements and made them even more forceful. His hands weren't idle as one gripped her other breast and the other held onto her hips to steady them as he slammed into her. Mei couldn't take it anymore as she screamed out his name in unfathomable pleasure. Naruto felt his own end arrive with her final squeeze and took his lips away from her punished breast, joining in her moans. Naruto's seed mixed with Mei's juices and they coalesced within her body. An unprecedented feeling between the two lovers could be felt upon the end of their orgasm. With his body and mind spent, Naruto covered up Mei and thought of how he too should join her in post-coital bliss. He knew he couldn't though, not tonight. Mei seemed to understand as she moved a weak hand to lay over his own, making his eyes meet hers. With an almost imperceptible nod, Naruto received her blessings, her understanding, and her love for his training that he would soon set out to do. Naruto couldn't bring words to describe how beautiful she looked, even with the sweaty sheen that made her glisten in the moonlight that shone through the windows. Naruto absently noted the rain had not let up, too caught up in his wife to worry about such trivial things. I know Naruto, good luck. I love you. Naruto kissed his wife's lips and slowly got off of the bed. Within a few minutes his clothing was back on and he was ready to leave. He spared a final look behind him and felt confidence surge through him as a tired Mei smiled at him. Go on, you have one last leg of training to do, my love. You're an Uzumaki, I know you can do it. Naruto remembered when Mei said the exact same words of confidence before he began his training with her all those years ago in Kiri. Only she and him would ever be able to share that nostalgic feeling through the memory. I love you, Mei, I'll be back soon. Naruto opened the balcony door and stepped out into the pouring rain before leaping out into the air and disappearing in a yellow flash. Mei waited for a moment even after he left, to make sure she saw him off well. He needed her trust now more than ever, and she would gladly give it to him if it meant he would survive that training. Satisfied that her husband would return to her soon, Mei fell into a deep sleep. 000 Uzumaki Uzumaki compound. Sasuke removed his blade from the gut of another bodyguard that was hiding within the grounds of the Uzumaki compound. He had arrived a short while ago and had easily gained access to the village. While he had the urge to kill anyone who got in his way, Sasuke kept his bloodlust from rising long enough to get in range of the supposed Uzumaki mansion. Another guard arrived in front of him. This time they had a pitiful swirl mask that looked just like Madara's. He could feel the hate radiate off of the man as he prepared to avenge the fallen shinobi and smirked, relishing in the rain that was pelting his skin in the dead of night. With the rain, it was easy for him to kill and no one would discern the dying screams from the rain that so gently lulled them back to sleep. He electrically charged his sword and activated his Mangekyo, preparing to destroy the man in front of him with Tsukuyomi. Before he could even begin though, the man fell to the ground in a muddy heap, unconscious. As Sasuke began to bring the sword down on the man, a long metal rod clanged against it and stopped his advance cold. Sasuke's red and black eyes looked up into purple-ringed ones, the deathly gaze set on by the one with the Rinnegan frightened Sasuke for a moment. He leaped back a bit and saw it was Pain, the Akatsuki member that Madara surmised had gone rogue. He had not been expecting him to be in Yuzu of all places. Pain, what the hell are you doing? Get out of my way and go bother someone else. The Deva path remained near the man's body, stalwart and unmoving even after Sasuke's angry order. Did you hear? The time for you to die has come, boy. Your taint on this world will be vanquished by me, and it will become my last gift to this world as I entrust it to the next generation." Sasuke squinted in confusion to the man's cryptic words as he saw another pain pick up both bodies of the men and take them off somewhere. It was not long before all 6 paths stood before Sasuke glaring at him. "You're not making any sense. If you threaten me again, I won't hesitate to kill you and destroy those eyes of yours." Pain was not fazed by the petty insult, merely allowing his final words to Sasuke flow through the air with a final tone. "This god has spoken. Your time has come." 000 Myobokuzen Land of Toads. 4 figures stood around a large crystal ball. One was sitting on a large cushion and had his webbed hands hovering over the ball. His old and decrepit form belied his true power. The great toad sage held a neutral expression on his face as the party watched Pain confront Sasuke. "Quite an interesting change of events, Aogiji-sama," Fukasaku noted as he sat next to his wife Shima and the large hulking figure to the other side of him. The old toad nodded, his wizened mind analyzing the situation in Uzumaki. They had been sitting here watching the crystal ball for days, even weeks, barely eating anything at all as it would disrupt their silent vigil of the world around them. "Yes, Fukasaku, that Naruto-chan is quite an interesting one. I wonder if the monkey's training will be as equal of an advantage of our sage training?" Fukasaku shrugged. No human had ever completed it, so it was hard to tell. "Well, the last time I saw Yamusha we both were about at equal strength even when we began to use our special training. I figure Naruto-chan has a good chance of becoming strong as long as he is in their care." Shima was sitting quietly, watching the drama unfold between Sasuke and Pain instead of bickering over useless things. "I suppose with the rallying of Madara's forces and the trouble Leaf is about to be in, it is just about time we showed ourselves, huh, Jiraiya boy?" The 4th present sitting near the crystal ball was finally acknowledged as Jiraiya, the human toad sage. The white-haired man smirked as he watched his previous apprentice prepare to go up against Sasuke, weighing their options. "It looks like it is really about to hit the fan in Konoha. I guess I should make a good appearance with the toads, huh?" Fukasaku chuckled at Jiraiya and waggled his finger at him. "Good thing for you that Tsunade-chan isn't there, or else she would kill you for hiding from everyone this long." Jiraiya frowned and scratched the back of his head, meekly pointing over to the great toad sage. "Well, it's not my fault. This guy said I should stay hidden from the world so peace would come. I was just doing what he said to do." The old geezer smiled. "Let's see them believe that in Konoha," Fukasaku muttered as Shima laughed and pointed at the cowering Jiraiya to give him her own jibe. "Tsunade-chan will believe it after she gives you a couple dozen hits on the head." Myobokuzen Land of Toads. Jiraiya stood with the 2 elder toads near the quick access pool that would allow them to reach Konoha in record time. The man of course would not be able to fit through though. It was alright because he had another plan. They were just finalizing their plans before they made to leave Myobokuzen. "So, we should head to Konoha first then and warn them?" Fukasaku asked Jiraiya as the man shouldered his scroll and placed his sandals on his feet. The 2 elderly toads had left the great toad sage's quarters with Jiraiya as he was preparing to leave. Because of the grave circumstances, Fukasaku had volunteered himself and Shima to accompany the Sannin to Konoha and fight. While Jiraiya did indeed plan to go to Konoha, he had a pit stop that he would have to head to first. Where they stood now, Konoha wouldn't stand a chance without a little help, and he had to settle a debt with an old friend. "Not exactly," Jiraiya notified, looking down into the confused faces of both toads. "I'm going to make an extra stop somewhere before I head to Konoha. I want you 2 to head to Konoha and warn them. If you could, it might not be a bad idea to get a messenger toad to Tsunade at the summit. It'll be better if she knows what's going on as soon as possible." The 2 toads looked at each other and nodded in assent to his requests. "That sounds like a plan, Jiraiya-chan. If we get a messenger to the summit, we might get the other villages' support too," Shima suggested. Since Konoha was in the alliance, it would only be right to bring along the other Kage and their forces. "Jiraiya boy, do you want Tsunade to know that you are alive in the message?" Jiraiya grabbed his chin in thought before sweat dropping and furiously shaking his head negatively. The 2 elders smirked. I didn't think that would be such a great idea. Can wait. Besides, how else will I appear as the hero if she already knows I'll be there? He chuckled nervously, not really believing the joke himself. The two toads just shook their heads in pity before Fukasaku asked the burning question on their mind. Jiraiya boy, why aren't you going to Konoha first? What is this extra stop you were talking about? You might need us with you. Jiraiya shook his head as he went through a few hand signs and smiled to the two confused elders. I'm sorry, but this is something I have to do on my own. You know what you have to do. Before they could argue further, Jiraiya teleported away back to the Shinobi continent. Fukasaku scratched his head and Shima crossed her arms in frustration. The boy was still stubborn and enigmatic, even if he could be a jokester. She just hoped he would realize when the right time to arrive in Konoha was, or else they would have a lot of trouble on their hands. Shima. She turned to her husband after he called her name. You go to Konoha and warn them of the danger. I'll get the messenger toad ready and be right behind you. We can't waste a second of our time in preparing for those tailed beasts. The woman nodded and jumped into the pool of water, using the seals there to teleport her to the other pool near Konoha. Fukasaku summoned a trusty runner toad and had him deliver a quick message to the Kage summit. The red and green toad saluted his boss and jumped into the teleporting pool, closely followed by Fukasaku. Meanwhile, the great toad sage gathered the large fighting toads to alert and prepare them for the coming battle. The toads were on the war march. 000 Yuzugakure Yuzu Tower AO was sitting at his friend's desk, looking through a few documents of importance as he waited for Naruto to return. It had been a few hours since the fateful encounter with Akatsuki in the streets of the Shinobi district and Naruto had yet to return, much to the worry of AO. As long as he was out, it was the ANBU general's duty to keep control over the village as temporary leader. In the meantime, he was waiting for reports from his ANBU units guarding the southwest wall as they had yet to report in. It wasn't necessarily odd, considering the fact that the rainstorm had yet to let up and it was difficult to maneuver with the strong winds blasting the village. However, ANBU were professionals and something like that shouldn't have been obstructing them from coming to report in person. But while it worried the man, he had other big problems to deal with. From what I can tell here from this message from Kiri's resistance forces, Madara is on the move. He was seen taking 4 large pots with him, all labeled a specific number. With that madman's ability, who knows what he's got cooked up. As soon as Naruto arrives, I'll have to report this to him. AO scowled and shook his head at the parchment. It wasn't news they wanted to hear. Then again, what can we expect? We were lucky that Madara and Akatsuki weren't active for the past few months. It gave us time to establish the village. I guess we're lucky that we aren't a major threat, or else Madara might have been coming after us instead of Konoha. Suddenly, a yellow flash appeared in front of the desk and AO quickly stood up in defense. He was greeted by the Uzumaki, somewhat soaked from the rain but otherwise in perfect health. He smiled and walked around the desk to meet with him face to face and allow Naruto take his place at the desk. He seemed happy. A certain glow was radiating off of the Kage that AO noticed. Something good must have happened to him. I wondered. Uzumaki-sama, good to see you're all right. When we saw you gone with those Akatsuki, we feared the worst. Naruto looked at AO and nodded in assent. He figured they wouldn't have been too happy with that scene. Yes, I was able to meet with them and discuss a more diplomatic solution. Turns out they are defectors from the organization and wanted to help us. I accepted it since we need all the help we can get. However, I don't have much time to be here, so give me a quick report. AO. The man was surprised by the information supplied but quickly forgot it so that he could respond to the order. Sir, we received a message from Kiri's resistance group that Madara has begun to move his forces against Konoha. Naruto visibly stiffened as he sifted through the papers on the desk, shaken by the news that Akatsuki was moving. I see that could be a problem. AO was surprised by the calm in his voice but paid no heed. He went on to explain the strange circumstances surrounding the invasion forces. That's not all. Apparently it isn't any normal invasion force with Shinobi. the man has 4 large pots that I believe have something to do with a sealing technique. I have no proof though, just a hunch. What should we do about this? Naruto thought for a moment, his eyes were looking at the desk in thought. Nothing for now, we aren't even in an alliance with them so it doesn't matter. What else? Ao was again shocked at the certain edge of ice in his tone but realized that he was right, they had no obligation to save Konoha. Well, I am concerned about the fact that a few of my squads are not reporting in at their posts. With this storm I feel like cutting them some slack, but for some it has been over an hour since the designated time. Naruto silently cursed and shook his head, he knew exactly what that meant. They are probably dead, we have an infiltrator in our village. Ao stiffened and scowled under his white mask, they had an enemy in the village so soon after the Akatsuki arrival? An enemy? Who? Naruto met his eyes for the first time and scowled as well, spitting out the name with venom. Sasuke Uchiha, apprentice and puppet of Madara. Ao's eyes went back to normal as he processed the information and concluded he wasn't too surprised by the fact that the boy had come, albeit he was angry that he had slipped by the man so easily. How do you want us to handle this, sir? Naruto had faith in Pain, he would leave it up to Nagato to win the day. Nothing, have our spare ANBU squads move to confirm the situation in the Uzumaki compound and have a double layer of Jonin and medical teams deployed there. I already have someone that is dealing with him as we speak, just make sure my wife and son are kept safe. Ao was confused as to the order seeing as how no one in the village save for a few had the caliber to fight the Uchiha but nodded anyway, once again he would have to trust the younger man's judgment call. Yes sir, I will deploy with the teams to your house myself and ensure the safety of your family. Where will you be, Naruto? Naruto was about to answer when Yamusha and a few other lava monkeys appeared in the room, surprising the ex-hunter Nin. Uzumaki-sama, they announced, bowing to Naruto. The blonde sighed and knew what they had come for, it was finally time to begin. I have training to begin, something that unfortunately cannot be delayed any further. Ao, I have left my last orders here in this scroll, please read them as soon as possible and have them fulfilled. Naruto held up a red scroll with the Uzukage stamp seal placed over it indicating its importance, he then held up a larger scroll that had a strap to fit over a person's shoulder. Give this one to Akaru, he will know what to do with it. Ao nodded and placed the orders in one of his vest scroll pouches while shouldering the larger scroll to take with him. Anything else, sir? He asked as it seemed the Uzukage would be leaving them again with little warning, a recurring trait with the young leader that made Ao uncomfortable. Just know that when I return, it will be the last time I will ever leave my people again. When I return, Naruto paused and walked around his desk to stand in front of the summons, a serious scowl set on his features. We will finish this war once and for all. As soon as Naruto uttered the last syllable, he and the monkeys disappeared in a puff of smoke, leaving Ao to gather the forces of Yuzu once again. Be safe, Naruto. I hope that for all our sakes, you can complete that training in record time. Ao thought to himself before he held up a hand sign and disappeared to accomplish his mission. 000 Uzugakure Uzumaki compound. As Mei slept soundly within her home, a confrontation was brewing at the front gates of the compound. Pain made no move to start the battle, waiting for Sasuke to make the first move. The boy in question was glaring at the ring-dyed man with his Mangekyo activated, dark energy flowing through him as he allowed his hate to fuel his power. Get out of my way, Sasuke charged forward with his sword, intent on getting rid of the first one to stand in his way. The Deva path held up an open palm towards the boy while the Azura path had a smirk on its face. Before Sasuke could respond, a burst of speed from the mechanical path forced his eyes on it instead and he brought up his sword to block a kick from it. With its first attack a failure, the Azura path weaved easily out of a stab from Sasuke's weapon and grabbed a hold of his weapon arm. Using its immense strength, Azura threw Sasuke into the air, allowing Deva to use his technique safely. Shinra Tensei, Sasuke felt a concentrated blast of chakra explode into his vulnerable body and was sent flying out of the village into the deep forest. Satisfied with the distance he shot the boy, Deva looked at Azura and inclined his head towards the animal path, and the strongman of the group nodded in assent. He grabbed the woman's slender body and threw her in the direction Sasuke landed, allowing Nagato to move the battle away from Uzumaki. The animal path sensed Sasuke's chakra and landed on a tree branch safely, going through hand signs before slamming her hand onto the ground. Summoning technique, from the smoke came the other 5 paths, and they hustled over to where Sasuke's dark energy was leaking from. They found the boy leaning against a tree, trying to gather his breath. A long trench in the ground and a few broken limbs in the trees above indicated his landing had not been graceful, and there were signs of bleeding from the Uchiha. With no remorse in their bodies, the paths got into a formation and prepared to finish the boy off as he glared at them with his eyes. "Damn you, Pain, at first I thought you were joking, should have known you weren't the joking type. Oh well, I suppose your usefulness has ended." Sasuke's left eye began to bleed as his murderous smirk erupted on his face, obviously believing the battle over. Pain showed no signs of moving as the boy prepared his eye's special attack. Amaterasu. The black flames raced towards the gathered paths before the Preta moved in front of them and held his hands up in defense. Sasuke began to chuckle darkly as he watched the man futilely attempt to block his attack. It would do no good. Amaterasu was the god's vengeance, the flames of the heavens. They were unquenchable, no one could put them out except a fellow Mangekyo user. Or at least, that was what the boy thought until he saw the flames begin to warp and disappear into the large Akatsuki's hands. How the hell did he defeat the flames? Preta lowered its hands. A small amount of smoke emanated from either hand and the smell of burnt flesh was obvious. While the Preta could absorb the attack, even something of its magnitude could only be contained so many times before the Preta would be unable to do so again. 000 Nagato coughed up blood from absorbing Amaterasu flames. It was an overwhelming amount of power that the path took in. As it was only a lifeless puppet with no chakra system of its own, the chakra absorbed from the Amaterasu was transferred to Nagato. Instead of being able to harness it though, the dark flames were almost lethal to Nagato before he ended their existence with his powers. "That was too close, 000, how did you?" Sasuke couldn't find the right words to articulate to his opponent. He was too shocked by his almighty powers being defeated so easily. "Do not underestimate the powers of the Rinnegan. I am your superior in all ways, Uchiha. Show some respect before I end you." The Deva countered. Nagato enjoyed the look of recoil on the boy's face with the counter. "Damn it, I guess I'll have to try something else," Sasuke said out loud as he prepared himself. He did his best to calm down before beginning. Pain watched with little emotion, feeling it was best to humor the boy for a short time before he killed him. It would do no good for him to go into the afterlife whining like a child for being defeated so quick. It would not be a welcome encounter for anyone. "I cannot delay his death for too long. My own time is coming shortly," Nagato thought to himself as he prepared to meet Sasuke's counterattack with his own. Crouching in a low stance, Sasuke suddenly used hidden seals on his forearms to summon 2 large windmill shuriken. Pain watched as the boy threw both weapons towards his group. He held up his hand and Sasuke could see a concentrated sphere of chakra begin to form around him. So that's his power, the ability to repel objects with his chakra. That is the power of the Rinnegan. Looks like this will be quite a challenge. Shinra Tensei. The projectiles were suddenly launched back at Sasuke at outrageous speeds, forcing him to think fast. With a quick crouch movement, Sasuke leaped through the space between the shuriken to escape the attack. Sensing the boy's precarious position, Nagato manipulated the Azura path to send it on a crash course with Sasuke, that would allow the blade on its back to impale the Uchiha. Sasuke read the attack with his Sharingan and began to focus his chakra. Azura impaled the boy but soon found that it had been tricked, hitting only a log. It scowled and threw the broken wood off of its body. Searching for the boy's location. Substitution. How simple. Nagato thought over the move that the Uchiha used to escape as he searched for the boy with 6 pairs of eyes. Chidori Senbon. Sasuke whispered from a nearby tree branch and shot dozens of small lightning needles straight at the recovering Azura, seeing its vulnerability. Unfortunately for Sasuke, Naraka Path saw the attack coming and without even turning towards the attack's location, Azura jumped out of the way with a sidestep. Sasuke's eyes widened at the unbelievable move done by the Path, taking suspicious notice of the Naraka Path staring at him. Their eyes, are they linked? That one wasn't even looking at me, and he knew when to dodge. The Rinnegan has many features. Bansho Tenin. Sasuke felt a pull on his body and saw the Deva Path holding its hand towards him again, this time using his power to pull Sasuke instead of push. Damn it, he cursed mentally when he saw the Azura step in his flight path with its carving knife aimed right at his abdomen, a sure hit this time. Calling on his left eye's power again, Sasuke formed an Amaterasu shield in front of him, forcing the Preta Path to jump in front and take the jutsu. This, coupled with Nagato's pain from absorbing the technique, led the Deva Path to momentarily falter in his technique and freed Sasuke. With Nagato's moment of vulnerability evident in Sasuke's eyes, he stabbed the vulnerable Preta right in the chest. This incapacitated the body, leaving 5 paths still up. That is one down. Sasuke looked to see both the human and Azura Path rush him and stalled his counterattack. He caught one punch from the human path and almost knocked the Azura Path's fist away when it suddenly changed course to avoid his counter. The air was knocked out of Sasuke when its fist impacted his stomach, leaving him vulnerable to a devastating knee kick from human that sent him flying backwards. The Azura grabbed one of its hands and pulled hard, revealing a cord from within the arm that had missiles attached to it. Aiming them all at Sasuke, it shot them off and had their heat-seeking abilities keep the lock on Sasuke's body strong so he couldn't escape. The Uchiha pushed himself up and prepared his counter. Sasuke had finally begun to sweat from the intensity of the battle. The missiles impacted the spot where Sasuke had occupied, and Nagato waited until his vision cleared to confirm his death. He was disappointed, however, when out of the smoke came Sasuke crouching in a large crater. The difference was that he had activated his level 2 curse form and used one of its wings to protect him from the blast. Observing his new form, Pain concluded that he would now have extra stamina and strength and prepared himself with caution. Sasuke lowered his battered wing and looked at the paths, taking a quick stock of the situation. His surprise was topped once again when he saw all 6 bodies standing, that included the one that he had stabbed into. How was he still up? Sasuke was sure he had killed him with a stab to the heart. Another power of the Rinnegan? How many abilities does he have? Sasuke grimaced in pain and held his side, still not fully healed from the first encounter with Pain. Now you see, it is futile to stand against Pain. Deva announced to the boy. Nagato had seen his shock when Preta was resurrected, and that allowed fear to creep into the Uchiha's heart. I am not done yet. A warbled war cry erupted from the Avenger's throat as he created a Chidori and used it to electrify his sword, charging forward towards Deva. It held up a hand towards him, as if to make him stop. Sasuke had already seen the trick once though and waited for the right moment to move. Pain launched his concentrated shockwave but was surprised to see Sasuke time his dodge correctly and sidestep the blast. It knocked down a tree behind where Sasuke stood before ending. He continued his charge until the animal path arrived in front of Deva and summoned something. Summoning technique, a large rhinoceros appeared and impacted Sasuke, slamming him backwards and away from the main path. The animal path's eyes widened when it saw numerous large white snakes appear over the rhino and begin to constrict its body. Before it could be killed, she unsummoned it, allowing the human path to charge forward with a chakra disruption blade appearing from its arm. Sasuke met his attack with his blade and the clack could be heard over the roaring rainstorm when the two impacted. In the bit of strength, Sasuke found that they were both equal and knew he had to do something. His Sharingan tracked Azura and Deva coming towards him on either flank. One had a similar chakra blade while the other had simply its fists. With no other options, Sasuke opened both of his eyes to reveal the Mangekyo. A ribcage formed around his body and all 3 paths were forced back from the defensive barrier. Nagato had never encountered such a defense and was momentarily intrigued by it before beginning to prepare another attack. Sasuke's breathing had picked up and it was obvious in combination with battle fatigue that creating Susanoo was difficult for his body to handle. Azura prepared to launch more missiles from the hidden areas in his hollow arms while Deva went through hand seals for a jutsu. The other paths stood back as they had no long-range capabilities. Sasuke observed the beginnings of the counterattack and began to focus his anger and hatred to further develop the Susanoo. Arms began to sprout from the ribcage as Pain launched his attack. Fire release. Flame bullet. Deva released a large blast of fire from its mouth towards Sasuke as the missiles impacted his shielded body. Craters were created everywhere around the Susanoo's body and Sasuke grunted from exertion in keeping the shield up. Pain's fire attack hit next and it literally forced Sasuke onto his knees from the pain from both his eyes being used to maintain the skeleton. The smoke was cleared to reveal Sasuke's shield intact, albeit much paler and the energy wavering. The two arms that had formed now both held a single sword of blackish-red chakra. Sasuke launched his attack at the concentrated paths, using his sword to swing in a horizontal arc low to the ground to make it more difficult to dodge. As it was too quick for a complete dodge, Azura was sacrificed by throwing Deva into the air while the others had just enough room to escape on their own. Sasuke cursed as the 5 remaining paths easily recovered and stared at him with little emotion to their downed comrade. What does it take to kill this guy? Sasuke was again assaulted by a surge of pain emanating from his eyes and fell to the ground on all fours. Pain looked at him with little pity and saw victory close at hand as the arms disappeared, leaving the weakened ribcage all that was keeping Sasuke safe. The two opponents met each other's gaze for a moment before Pain launched his next attack, concentrated on finishing off Sasuke's shield. Wind release. Gale force blow. Pain gathered up the wind in his mouth and shot it forward with a certain swing to his neck, allowing it to release in the form of a wide crescent. The attack was sent like a razor-sharp knife at Sasuke, impacting and shattering the unbreakable Susanoo. With little physical energy left, Sasuke once again activated his level 2 curse mark and used that chakra to give him a burst of speed and escape into the forest. Deva watched him run for a moment before looking back at Naraka to see it just finishing up reviving Azura. Nagato could feel the end was close and sent all 6 paths after the ailing form of Sasuke. With little energy left, Sasuke was now desperate to either escape or receive backup from Madara. He figured the old man couldn't accomplish his objectives if he was allowed to die, so he just had to live long enough until he came to bail him out. While it would be embarrassing to explain his loss, Sasuke was confident that he could save face by admitting to not having enough info on the Rinnegan for an excuse. Just have to escape that blasted pain. Sasuke felt a sharp surge of pain in his abdomen and screamed in anguish. He missed the next jump from his flinch and landed hard on the wet, muddy ground of Yuzu. He deactivated his Sharingan for a moment to assess his surroundings when a great horror came upon him. He could see nothing in front of him, everything was white and scratchy. He had gone blind in disbelief and anger. Sasuke gathered his chakra into his hand and sent a strong surge of lightning into the ground. The large explosion sent Sasuke flying backwards and brought Pain to the pitiful sight of a cowering Sasuke. The boy was in a fetal position near a fallen tree. As he got closer, Pain could hear the boy whimpering words of forgiveness or something other. It was useless though, no god would hear him today. Look how far the mighty Uchiha have fallen. Sasuke warily looked up from his prone position, looking in all directions trying to find the source of the noise. He looked absolutely terrified. Mangekyo's drawback has finally finished destroying your eyesight, how pitiful. Sasuke futilely waved his arms in front of him, attempting to ward away Pain. Stay back, don't touch me. Avoiding his pitiful swats, the human and Preta paths took both his arms and lifted him to sit on his knees in front of Deva. There is no point in resisting, I am already absorbing your chakra and reading your mind. There is nothing left for you to do but resign yourself to fate. Sasuke's blind eyes finally seemed to lock onto Deva's cold, toneless voice. He looked up into the eyes of his soon-to-be executioner with fear. Please spare me, he begged. It was nothing to Nagato. He was one of hundreds that had asked the same thing moments before their death. Pitiful, you use your last words to beg. What would your family think of you now? Your brother gave everything to redeem you and yet you killed him in your lust for power. Your parents were sacrificed because of fear while all they did was show love and hope for you. There is nothing left that they love inside of this body, it is merely a shell. The former Sasuke Uchiha died long ago, think of this as a favor. Sasuke felt a pang in his heart as he was reminded of the actions of his family. He then realized that maybe there was a different path he could have followed had he chosen differently. Itachi, Sasuke whispered as Deva lifted its arm into the air and formed a chakra blade. Mother, Deva brought it down and leveled it a short distance from the boy's heart, preparing for the final move. I'm sorry. Pain launched his arm forward and impaled Sasuke on his blade, successfully piercing his heart and ending the boy's life. This god acknowledges your apology. Pain noted as the boy showed signs of redemption in his final moments, something a lesser man like Madara would never admit to. He shucked the boy's body off of his blade and retracted it back into his body. Nagato was feeling quite weakened after the battle was over, suddenly realizing his adrenaline kept him in the dark over his body's grim condition. Seeing that he had little time to spare, the human path picked Sasuke's body up and headed back for Uzumaki. 000 Madara felt something in the back of his mind and looked off in a seemingly random direction. His thoughts were clouded with a variety of emotions, disappointment, expectation, pity and even laughter. One of the men near him saw him stop moving and questioned his leader. Sir, is something wrong? Madara turned his attention back to the trail and kept walking with little else on the matter to say. No, keep moving. Sasuke has died, that is one loose end gone. 000 Uzumaki Tower. In a flash of light the six paths were in the empty, dark room of Naruto's job place. Deva grabbed an empty scroll, wrote a few notes down with a brush and ink and finally sealed Sasuke's body away for a proper burial. If he had behaved differently at the end, pain would have left him to rot in the muddy earth. With his final request of forgiveness though, Nagato felt generous enough. A cough of blood on Nagato's end made all the paths stiffen for a moment, his end was drawing near. With little else to do, Nagato recalled his paths back to him. He wanted to make sure that only Naruto would find their dead corpses and he wanted to make sure Yahiko would receive a proper burial. Going through a few hand signs, Nagato used what was left of his chakra to awaken the seventh path and bring back to life those killed by Sasuke that night. With the boy's confession and the need for able-bodied shinobi for the coming battle, Nagato knew that he had to use the last of his powers wisely. 000 Yuzu Island. Nagato's hideaway. As he waited for his bodies to return, Nagato struggled to keep conscious as the internal damage to his body began to leak over to his outer appearance. His bleeding was now emanating from his back as well as his mouth, and his breathing was very erratic as his lungs worked harder to take in the desired amount of oxygen. Whether it be an illusion brought on by his dire situation or a gift from Kami, Nagato saw in front of him a small rift in space. Within it was his dear friend, Yahiko. The boy was in his old aim overcoat, the same one that he wore the day he died. His face was bright and cheerful, exactly like it was when all three orphans were with Jiraiya, like when they were a family. Yahiko. Nagato, despite his condition, garbled out a greetings through a bloody smile. To his disappointment the boy did not say anything back, he merely stood there with a smile, beckoning Nagato to come closer. I'm sorry Yahiko ***, I wasn't the Messiah you thought I could be ***. More blood erupted from his mouth and stained the rocky ground below him. Yahiko frowned at the sight of his friend. Nagato began to smile as he remembered Naruto, that boy was the true Messiah of peace. Yahiko seemed to notice his upbeat attitude and smiled again. I know I didn't *** give the world peace like I promised, but I *** found someone else that could do it better than I. Please Yahiko Narutoyer blessing ***. Again Nagato found himself at odds with his coughing, now finding it very difficult to talk with blood coming up from his esophagus. Yahiko nodded his head once and then reached his hand forward, through the portal, and towards Nagato's unmoving form. With a little burst of energy, Nagato slowly detached his left arm from the machine and weakly reached out to grab his friend's hand. Hang on ***, I'm coming. When their hands touched, Nagato felt a light feeling inside his frail body slowly leave himself and felt a pull that would send him through the portal to Yahiko. He now realized that this was Kami's way of delivering him to the afterlife, and he wanted to thank the kind God for allowing him to see Yahiko once more. Once his entire body had been pulled through the rift, it disappeared, leaving a shell of a body behind and 6 fallen puppets at the mouth of the cave. The god amongst men had passed on. 000 Land of Sound. Jiraiya was running through the trees, jumping from branch to branch in search of the entrance to Orochimaru's current lair. With use of the Great Toad Sage's crystal ball, they were able to locate Orochimaru's location, which Jiraiya desperately needed. He had to speak to his teammate. It was urgent business with the oncoming attack of Konoha. He felt a few chakra signatures approaching him and knew he had little time to play games. He quickly went through hand signs in mid-hop and launched a large flame bullet forward through the trees. 3 bodies fell to the ground, burnt and writhing in utter pain from the attack. The Sound Shinobi had thought they would ambush the trespasser when in reality they were no match for the particular invader. Jiraiya created a Rasengan in his palm and launched forward into an empty spot on a tree branch. He was rewarded with a scream and blood when the Sound Shinobi reappeared from his chameleon technique and slammed into the tree behind him. Jiraiya could feel no more presences and continued on, this time without any obstacles along the way. I must close if they bothered to attack me now. Come out, Orochimaru, I know you're here. It wasn't long before Jiraiya's keen eyes found purchase with a steel door that was up against a large piece of rock. With a single strong punch, the door came crashing down and allowed Jiraiya easy entrance to his old friend's lair. His cool pose only lasted a moment before he broke down into tears and nursed his hurt hand from hitting a heavy steel door. OUCH 000 Land of Sound. Orochimaru's hideout. Kabuto was on his way to attend to his master with some medicine when a faint echo emanated from down the long hallway of rock. He thought it sounded like a person but shrugged it off as impossible before continuing to walk down the hall. With his primary host gone, Orochimaru could only delay his inevitable death with drugs that Kabuto cooked up, but the silver-haired boy was running out of formula to keep his master alive. They had few options anyway since the Land of Sound was falling apart without an active leader. Orochimaru was now confined to his bed, no longer strong enough to get up and walk. Only a miracle could bring him back to his original strength. Kabuto had hoped to find a solution but there was none. His master had also been quiet on the fact he was dying, a far outcry from the complaints he had been expecting. Perhaps Orochimaru-sama has a plan, or maybe he has finally accepted his dream of immortality is coming to an end. What will I do when he is dead? Kabuto honestly didn't know the answer. He would be killed if he returned to the Leaf, but he was considered a criminal everywhere but the Sound. It wouldn't last though, as his immunity from being within Sound would falter upon his master's death. Without Orochimaru, there was no Sound. He was the village leader, lead scientist, and practically the ruler over the entire nation of rice fields. Once the neighboring countries received word of his death, they would see the weakness and attempt to invade. He knocked on the door of his master's room upon arriving and received a feeble, "Come in," from Orochimaru. Kabuto opened the door to find the pitiful form of his master laying in bed as if he had come down with a common cold. It wasn't any normal sickness though. It was the rejection of the previous host's body and his age that kept him so weak. Kabuto began to move towards his master but stopped when Orochimaru held up a hand. A scowl on his features told him something was wrong. "I'm disappointed, Kabuto. I expected that you were better than that." His eyes narrowed in confusion and his brow crinkled as he attempted to decipher what he meant. "What do you mean, Orochimaru-sama?" The pale man scoffed and pointed at the boy's shadow, created from the candles that hung from the walls of the room. It began to change shape and forced Kabuto to jump away from it, close to Orochimaru. Jiraiya appeared and cracked his joints from being in such an uncomfortable spot for that long period of time. Kabuto glared at the newcomer and got out a kunai. He was prepared to defend Orochimaru to the death if necessary. "Jiraiya, how unpleasant it is to see you." Orochimaru seethed. His usual sarcasm was gone in place to pessimism due to his dire situation. The pale-haired man looked his old teammate up and down and gave a hearty laugh that was full of pity. The snake Sannin scowled and felt the urge to crush the man's neck only to realize he could barely move. "Shut up you bastard," Kabuto yelled out, clutching his kunai tightly as he waited for the attack. Jiraiya calmed himself a bit and allowed a smile to grace his face despite the tense situation. "Orochimaru, I thought you were stronger than that. I guess the years haven't been too kind to you since we last met." The scowl did not disappear from the man's face and he sneered in angry disgust. "What the hell do you want, Jiraiya? Finally come to kill me? It is sad that you have to come and do it when I can no longer fight back." Jiraiya's smile turned to a serious scowl as he looked his old comrade in the eye, trying to show how serious him being there was. "No," Orochimaru's eyes widened as Jiraiya denied his guess. "I've come to ask for your help." Both Orochimaru and Kabuto's eyes widened at the sound of that. Jiraiya wanted their help. 000 Land of Fire. Konohagakure outskirts. Madara was nearing Konoha. His men were already beginning the final preparations of the assault. The plan was simple: take control of the beasts and summon them right in the midst of Konoha's surprise defenders. The village would be annihilated in an instant with the power of four-tailed beasts. It would not take a moment longer for Madara to accomplish his revenge. "Sir, we are awaiting your order to crack the seals." Madara turned his attention to the men that surrounded each of the pots and brought his hands up to signal them to begin. "Go release the beasts from the containers, it is almost time. Even Hashirama Senju himself couldn't stop me now." 000 Land of Iron Castle. Kage meeting, and so I suggest we unite our intelligence divisions into one organization. Finished his speech, bringing the Kage's attention to the benefits of combining their forces. "That is all well and good, but when will we strike back against Madara?" Inoki wondered out loud to the group. They had done so much preparation yet had not made a single claim to attack. "We have no target. Kiri is merely a puppet to Madara. We must wait until he reveals himself to challenge him." Gaara reminded the Tsuchikage, who gave a huff of frustration before quieting down. "Can we defeat him though when we don't even know his strength?" Tsunade muttered, loud enough for the other Kage to hear. Inoki grunted. "I fought him once, I may be able to offer some insight. It would be better if we could speak with that Shodai of yours, Hashirama." "Too bad he kicked the bucket." Tsunade glared at him for speaking so freely of her grandfather's death but said nothing. A loud knocking came to the door of the large meeting room, since then repaired from Sasuke's original assault. The doubled samurai guard within the room stiffened and moved toward the door, their swords up and ready. The captain with the wolf pelt on his back signaled the men to open it and they pulled on the heavy slab doors to open. As they expected the enemy to emerge from the hallway, all the men present had to incline their heads down to see the small toad messenger that was waving at them. "Yo, is Tsunade here?" The woman in question looked over towards the door and saw a toad, one that was affiliated with Fukasaku. "Yes, I am right here." The toad looked over and smiled at the sight of her, quickly hopping on the table by the other surprised Kage and giving her a message scroll from his back. Tsunade opened the scroll quickly with curious eyes and found out soon just how dire the situation was at home. The other Kage watched as her eyes widened and her breathing became heavy, obviously indicating something was very wrong. "What is it, Tsunade?" Questioned, concerned for the female Hokage, she looked up from the scroll with trembling hands and dropped it on the table. "Konoha is about to come under attack by Madara. He is going to use the tailed beasts on the village." The collective gasps from around the room were enough to show the shock of the news and A immediately stood up from his seat. "We must rally the troops and head for Konoha. This is our chance to defeat Madara once and for all." Inoki huffed and signaled for Akatsuchi to come and pick him up. The big man put the leader on his back. "We don't have much time, we have to head for our villages immediately." The other Kage nodded and Mifune turned towards his bodyguards. "Order the platoons on standby to prepare for marching orders. We head for Konoha." Just as the man was reaching for his transceiver, a kunai flew through the air from an unseen location and slit the man's throat. "I'm afraid we can't allow any of you to leave this place." The Kage looked up into the stands of the room to find dozens of root shinobi surrounding them. The samurai looked ready to charge forward but secretly placed explosive tags erupted on the wall behind them and killed them all in a dirty trick. With the Kage now left only with their bodyguards, the leader of this ambush made his appearance known. Tsunade scowled at the sight of Danzo calmly finding a spot within the wall of root forces as he smiled at them. The old man had been waiting for the meeting to adjourn before showing himself. Now it was his turn to finish the battle in a blaze of glory. With little else to say, Danzo signaled for his men to launch their attack at the bewildered Kage. 000 Yuzu Island Mountain of Fire. Naruto sat on the very edge of the volcano, in a meditative form with his palms up against each other in quiet concentration. The rain clouds were not tall enough to reach the height of the volcano's mouth, so it allowed Naruto peace for his training. The lava monkeys surrounded him, quietly watching him as he began the first stage of training. Master Yamusha, please remind me again of the first phase and its point. The large monkey cleared its throat and began to speak again to remind the boy the importance of the first part. This stage of training is what all Crimsonbacks are subjected to, and upon its completion, you will be an honorary Crimsonback yourself. It encourages inner balance with your physical and spiritual energy as you meditate near a very dangerous and very real hazard, the volcano. After you can completely still your chakra and find a peaceful medium, we will take you lower into the mouth so you will sit on a very hot ledge of cooled magma. Once you can handle that, you will allow scalding lava to hit and burn your back, effectively making you a Crimsonback. We have been able to survive this by conditioning our bodies through training and from our ancestors' hardy skin. That is also where all humans have so far died. It is up to you to find a way to survive and accustom yourself to the lava so that you may not be hurt by it. Naruto opened his eyes for a moment to look at Yamusha. His shirt was off, so there was nothing that protected Naruto from the heat behind him. It felt like tiny blisters were erupting on his skin. What will happen after that? Yamusha looked to Yamera to explain the final step, and the younger monkey spoke up. Naruto-sama, if you can successfully survive and accustom your body to the extreme heat of the lava, you will then move on to the final stage. In the final stage you must completely submerge yourself in the lava and find balance. It will be extremely difficult if not impossible to do, but if you can stay alive while being completely unmoving, you can absorb the natural heat, or otherwise known as geothermal energy, into your body. This will augment you in a variety of ways, but what we really wish to see is the fabled avatar form. It is said that only the Four Tails himself was able to accomplish this, and that the ability was passed on to his Jinchuriki through his chakra. If you can master that form, you will be a demigod among men and without match. Naruto had no idea how he was going to survive such a rigorous training regimen, but the sound of reward was too high for him to refuse. I promised everyone that I would accomplish this. May his confidence in May can't fail. Understood. He looked eyes with the monkeys and proudly told them his decision. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. Make sure to like and subscribe, and don't forget to share this video with your friends. If you want early updates, check out Patreon. This is Fox Sage, and I'm signing off.